Okay, this is mind-blowing. Deplete our own stockpiles by sending weapons to, sadly, a losing cause in Ukraine, then spend more money to replenish the stockpiles, which will help the defense contractors. They really do think you're stupid. But the way things are going now in Ukraine, we should just have the Pentagon send weapons directly to Russia, because they're going to end up taking them eventually anyway.
This is my video update from Sofia, Bulgaria on this Friday midday, November the 3rd. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Biden versus Netanyahu. That is what we have going on at the moment. Joe Bidenopolis squaring off against Benjamin Netanyahu. Who will survive? Who will stay in power? That is the question. Politico, they ran an article yesterday where they basically said that the Biden White House would like to see the Netanyahu administration gone. They're not happy with the way the Netanyahu administration has been handling the war in Israel and in Gaza, and they would like to see a change in power in Israel. And since that article from Politico was published, we have had many, many more articles from the collective West mainstream media basically saying the same thing, that the Biden White House wants the Netanyahu administration out of there. They want them out of power in Israel. And they are blaming Netanyahu for what is turning into a political and media debacle with regards to the war in Israel and in Gaza. And they are saying that Netanyahu is to blame for this debacle. Business Insider, they ran with an article which said that an IDF official said that Benjamin Netanyahu is more concerned about staying in power than actually fighting the war in Israel and Gaza. And the Financial Times, they ran an article yesterday saying that Netanyahu is an albatross around Biden's neck. That Benjamin Netanyahu and the way he's been handling things up until today is actually pulling the Biden White House down. And with Netanyahu in power, there's going to be no resolution to the war in Israel and in Gaza. No successful resolution to the war in Israel and in Gaza. And basically, Financial Times is making the case that the Biden White House, they need to drop Netanyahu. Drop him like a bad habit. And CNN, they also put out an article yesterday where CNN says that the Biden White House is very concerned that the public outcry over what has been happening in Gaza means that the conflict, the war against Hamas, has to be resolved within a matter of weeks, not months. That is what CNN wrote, that their interviews with various officials in the Biden White House claim that the Biden White House is now putting immense pressure on Israel to wrap up the war in Gaza, because time is running out and they only have weeks to wrap things up, because if they don't eliminate Hamas within a matter of weeks, then according to CNN, the U.S. will basically not be able to protect Israel's position with regards to the war in Gaza. Actually, let me read you what CNN is saying in this article. The title of the article is "U.S. Warns Israel Amid Gaza Carnage. It doesn't have long before support erodes." President Joe Biden and his top advisors are warning Israel with growing force that it will become increasingly difficult for it to pursue its military goals in Gaza as global outcry intensifies about the scale of humanitarian suffering there. And then the article talks about how Lloyd Austin, Anthony Blinken, and other officials. By the way, Blinken is on his way to. Actually, he is in the Middle East at this moment, and how all of the Biden White House staff are making the case in private conversations with Israelis, telling them that eroding support will have dire strategic consequences for Israel Defense Force operations against Hamas. The article says that behind the scenes, American officials also believe there is limited time for Israel to try to accomplish its stated objective of taking out Hamas in its current operation before uproar over the humanitarian suffering and civilian casualties and calls for a ceasefire reaches a tipping point. In fact, there is recognition within the administration that that moment may arrive quickly. Some of the president's close advisors believe that there are only weeks, not months, until rebuffing the pressure on the U.S. government to publicly call for a ceasefire becomes untenable, sources told CNN. And what's the reason for this panic? What's the reason for the Biden White House now pressing Israel to wrap up the operation in a matter of weeks? Because if they don't wrap up the operation, then the U.S. is going to be put in an untenable position with regards to Israel and this war in Gaza. Well, the situation that appears to have created this shift, and it is a shift in policy and in stance from the Biden White House, is the bombing of the refugee camp in Jabalia, particularly jarring to Biden and his national security team. Two sources familiar with the matter said were Israeli airstrikes this week that targeted a refugee camp in northern Gaza, resulting in grim scenes of widespread destruction and deaths. The president didn't like that at all, one of the sources said. The problem for Israel is that the criticism is getting louder, not just among their detractors, but from their best friends, one senior administration official said. So that is the situation that is unfolding right now in Israel between the Biden White House and the Netanyahu administration. It's going to be tough for the Biden White House to get Netanyahu to step down or step aside, because Netanyahu, he is a very he's a political survivor. I mean, he's sinister, but he's very clever, and he knows how to play the game. And he is a political survivor. It's going to be very, very difficult to engineer the removal of Netanyahu. And Netanyahu, he has the support of the hardcore neocons. The neocons light, we're talking about Sullivan and, let's say, Blinken and these guys who are kind of this fusion between neoliberals and neocons. I like to call them the neocons light. They're thinking about the optics, the videos and images that are coming out of Gaza, the international support for the U.S. and for Israel that is quickly eroding. We see a lot of countries now starting to cut off their diplomatic relations with Israel. We had Bolivia cut off diplomatic ties with Israel the other day. Bahrain is cutting off economic ties with Israel. You have Colombia moving towards the same direction. Tunisia actually put out a statement yesterday and said something along the lines of anyone that supports Israel, it's going to be seen as treason or something like that. And even Chile, they put out a message to the Biden White House, and they said that the terror attacks on October 7th should rightly be condemned. But Chile also told the Biden White House that the Biden White House has to also condemn the bombing of Gaza as well. So that was a message that Chile put out to the Biden White House. And we're seeing more and more countries, even countries that are friendly allies to the United States and allies to Israel, we're seeing that they're starting to crack. And the more this war drags on, and the more images we get, like what happened at the refugee camp, the more that stuff like this happens, and the more that these images are put out on the interwebs, the more that you're going to see support for this war and this operation fade away, vanish, disappear. And then you have the what's playing out in the U.S., the election, domestic support for Biden. That is going away, especially with Generation Z and the Arab Muslim American voter base. They are telling the Democrat Party that if Biden does not get a ceasefire, then they're gonna either vote for Republicans, they're gonna vote, say, Trump, or they're going to not vote at all. And that means that Biden is going to lose some very key states in the elections in 2024. And even if they find a replacement for Biden, even if someone else runs replacing Biden in 2024 for the Democrats, the DNC, they understand that they're going to be blamed for this debacle in Israel, the optics and the images and the bombing. It's going to be the Democrat Party that is going to be blamed for everything that is unfolding in Gaza. So, what was I saying? You have these neocon lights like Sullivan, who are very, very concerned about the election, and so they're basically signaling to Israel that they don't have months, they have weeks, because the damage that's being done to Biden and to the Democrat Party for the elections in 2024 is, if this continues, it's not going to be able to be fixed. They're not going to recover from this. They're going to lose these votes. It's going to be permanent, and so they're saying that this needs to be wrapped up within a matter of weeks. And time, it's looking like time is strangely enough, time is not on Israel's side. Time is not on their side with this conflict. And it appears that time may be on the side of the Palestinians, of Hamas even. They're seeing this. They're seeing this unfold, and they understand that at this moment time is working against Israel. And so you have a big speech by Hezbollah in a couple of hours, actually, and a lot of people are saying that the leadership of Hezbollah may actually enter the war. That's what a lot of analysts are speculating, and we'll see. By the time this video goes up, I think the speech will have been made, and we'll find out what Hezbollah is going to announce. This big announcement, if this is indeed going to be a big announcement from Hezbollah. But the U.S., they actually believe that Hezbollah is not going to enter the war. They believe that for Hezbollah to enter the war would be a catastrophe, not only for Hezbollah, but also for Iran. It would widen out the war. And even the Biden administration believes that at this moment, Hezbollah and Iran, they don't want this war to widen. And I agree. I think that makes sense if you're looking at this from Iran and Hezbollah's perspective, and you're tracking everything that the media is saying and everything that's going on social media and the images that are coming out and the public outcry and the public opinion on what's happening in Gaza. You also have to be saying to yourself that that time is on your side. I mean, the CNN article, says it's pretty plainly. I mean, it puts it right out there. The Biden White House is telling the Netanyahu administration that they need to wrap this thing up quickly. That is what the CNN article is saying. And so if you're Hezbollah, for example, or if you're Iran, why would you widen out the war? Why? It's better to, if you're these groups, or if you're Iran, it's better to just sit back and be patient. That seems like that would make the most sense, but I don't know. Maybe Hezbollah will enter the war after this speech, but I think that would be a huge strategic error from Hezbollah and by extension, from Iran. But that's the situation. That is what is happening right now with the war in Israel and in Gaza. There is heavy fighting. There are reports which claim that Israel is making progress to surround Gaza City, but both sides are taking losses. I would guess that Hamas's losses are much greater than the IDF's losses, but both sides are incurring losses as the fighting continues, and the fighting continues as we see this political maneuvering between Biden and Netanyahu play out, and that's going to probably decide the direction of this conflict. Netanyahu, he has the support of the hardcore neocons, but the neocons light, well, they're trying to push Israel to wrap this thing up very quickly. So not only do you have the Democrat Party kind of being torn apart by the war in Israel, you have the neocons being split by the war in Israel. The hardcore neocons, they're going to definitely be siding with Netanyahu, and they're going to not only want the conflict to go on, but they're going to want the conflict to expand. This is their opportunity to finally get war with Iran, and the hardcore neocons like Graham and Haley, McConnell, Newland, Kagan, all of these guys, they're not going to want to give up on their opportunity to finally go after Iran. I mean, this is as close as they have ever gotten to getting an all-out war against Iran. And so, very much like Ukraine, where the neocons saw their opportunity to go to war with Russia and to try to remove the Putin administration, they took full advantage of the opportunity, and they got the proxy war that they have been pushing for with what's going on right now in the Middle East, and with the possible conflict with Iran. The hardcore neocons, they are going to absolutely back Netanyahu in this row with Biden. They're going to be pushing the Biden administration to stop calling for a ceasefire, to stop pressuring the Israeli government to wind things down quickly, and they're going to push the Biden administration in the direction of escalation and war with Iran. And you have the neocon lights who, as I was explaining earlier, they're concerned about the election. I think at the end of the day, they're concerned about media optics, and they're concerned about the election. And they're going to try and push for a quick resolution to this war. and they're going to try to scapegoat Netanyahu because they can't have this debacle fall on the shoulders of Biden and on the Democrat Party. So they're going to have to find someone to blame for what's taking place right now in Israel and in Gaza, and they're going to want to find a way to resolve this quickly so that they can try to repair whatever damage, if it can be repaired, whatever damage has been done with the Generation Z voting base and the Arab Muslim American voting base. So that's kind of like a civil war that is taking place between the neocons, the hardcore neocons and the neocon lights. Lindsey Graham and Nikki Haley versus Jake Sullivan. That's pretty much what you have going on right now at the moment. So that is an update on what's happening with the war in Israel and Gaza, the situation that is taking place, that is unfolding in the Middle East. And let's talk about what is unfolding in Project Ukraine, because we have quite a lot to get to with regards to Project Ukraine, the forgotten conflict. That is what Project Ukraine has become. But the U.S., they announced that they're going to be sending $425 million worth of additional weapons to the Zelensky regime. Congress is also pressing the Biden White House to send more ATACMS to the Zelensky regime, which means if Congress is pressing the Biden White House to send ATACMS, I would make the guess that ATACMS are either on their way to Ukraine or have already arrived to Ukraine, additional ATACMS. Germany, they are sending 25 older versions of the Leopard tanks to the Zelensky regime, as well as other military equipment. I believe the next package from Germany is something like 5 billion euros, if I remember, of tanks and military aid and equipment to Ukraine. And remember what the German defense minister said the other day in an interview with German media. He said that Germany has to rebuild its military, and that's what we're seeing play out in Germany. Business for the military-industrial complex. So Germany is getting rid of. It appears that Germany is getting rid of all of their older equipment. They're shipping it off to the Zelensky regime, and they're going to be signing a whole bunch of contracts with the MIC to get new equipment for the German military, to build up the German military. That is what the German defense minister Pistorius said in an interview the other day. And so Germany is now sending 25 old Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Those Leopard tanks will be destroyed by the Russian military, no doubt about it. Avdiivka, the battle in Avdiivka is looking very, very bad for the Zelensky regime. Actually, let me read you a couple of tweets with regards to what is happening in Avdiivka from Simplicius the Thinker. I won't predict that it's actually going to fall that fast, but I will say that there was one particular report yesterday that said Avdiivka would fall in 3 to 4 days or a week at the very most. Some are saying the situation is even worse for the AFU than we imagine. Others, of course, still predict it could take till the end of the year or so, but there appears to be increasing reports showing the volatility of the situation for the AFU, which could cause an immediate collapse there. And a tweet from Aiden says, the situation is deteriorating even quicker than I initially thought. The Russians have crossed the railway north of the coke plant, and there is a serious lack of fortifications that the AFU can use north of the city. Been saying for a while, but losing that hill has slated Avdiivka to become the next Russian victory. Ignore all the cope about tactical trap. That's nonsense. Bakhmut would have been a more appropriate city to match that description. Avdiivka has no Chasov Yar to keep the city supplied. So basically, the situation for Avdiivka is looking very dire for the Ukraine military. Avdiivka could fall within a matter of days, or perhaps it may last until the end of the year. But Avdiivka is looking to shape up to be a big loss for the Zelensky regime, and perhaps the loss of Avdiivka may actually mean the downfall of Zelensky himself and his government, because waiting in the wings, you have the potential successor to Zelensky, and that is one Arestovich. Arestovich is now actually openly talking about negotiations with Russia. He is making many statements where he is saying that the conflict is not going well. Ukraine is not winning the war, and he is saying that Ukraine needs to negotiate with Russia. I quote, "We need to reconcile with the Russians." That is what Arestovich is now openly saying. And Arestovich, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. He's been kept very, very close to the levers of power on purpose, because the U.S. government, the deep state, the globalists, call them whatever you like, the people that are really managing this conflict, Project Ukraine, they have been keeping Arestovich very close to the levers of power, because they understood that when and if it's time to remove Zelensky, you are going to need someone to fill the void, to fill that vacuum, and it seems like Arestovich may be the guy. And it's a great story, isn't it? It really makes for good storytelling. The collective West media is going to frame the possible accession of Arestovich really well, I believe. It's going to be very, very cinematic. The downfall of Zelensky, once thought to be the hero of Ukraine, the Churchill of our times, he's messed up the war. He's messed up the conflict with Russia, and his one-time BFF, his one-time co-star, actor, best friend, Arestovich, they've had a falling out, and now it's left to Arestovich to clean up the mess of Zelensky. I can really see some very, very good collective West script writing taking place if Zelensky is removed and Arestovich takes over. So that is the situation in Ukraine. And before we get to our clown worlds, we had a vote in the UN General Assembly, which I think is worth pointing out, with regards to Cuba. And this is a vote that actually takes place every year, and the vote calls for the sanctions and the embargo, the blockade of Cuba to be condemned and removed. And in this vote at the UN General Assembly, every country in the world condemned the blockade, the US blockade on Cuba, with the exception of two countries and one country abstaining. And the two countries that did not condemn the blockade of Cuba were the United States and Israel, and the one country that abstained was Ukraine. Every other country in the United Nations said that the blockade and embargo of Cuba needs to stop. Every country, except for the United States, Israel, and Ukraine being the one country that abstained. So that's not good. That doesn't look good for the United States. It doesn't look good for Israel, and of course, it doesn't look good for Ukraine either, because Ukraine abstaining is basically their way of saying that they're siding with the United States on a blockade and an embargo on Cuba. So I thought it was worth just talking a bit about this vote that took place in the General Assembly. And we can now go to our clown worlds. And the first clown world has to do with US sanctions that have been placed on Russia. More US sanctions on Russia. Quite a lot of sanctions on Russia, actually, from the United States. So the US hasn't learned anything from their sanctions policy towards Russia, because it seems like with each sanctions package that is placed on Russia, whether it's coming from the United States or the European Union, the Russian economy just gets stronger and stronger. And it's getting to the point where even Russian President Vladimir Putin is openly mocking the sanctions that are being placed on Russia. This is what Putin said the other day with the announcement of more sanctions being placed on Russia. He said, and I quote, "Our partners are now taking their fantasies to the absurd, banning the import of screwdrivers, needles, and so on to Russia," Putin said. "Well, the less junk, the better. There is less chance that bedbugs will be exported to us from major European cities," Putin added, referring to the recent infestation in some EU countries. According to the Russian president, the West has so far adopted countless sanctions packages, but has practically become entangled in its own restrictions. They tried to punish us, but in the end, as we see, they hit their own economies, Putin said. Putin added that he expects sanctions to be intensified, while calling on the Russian government to be ready for potential acts of sabotage on important infrastructure facilities. Putin warned that acts similar to the destruction of the Nord Stream natural gas pipelines could be taken once sanctions options are exhausted. That's an interesting comment from Putin, huh? So he's mocking the sanctions of the collective West, the Australia screwdriver sanction, and the Lithuania needles sanction that they put out, knitting and needle sanctions that they called for the other day. But he says that once the sanctions are exhausted, Russia should prepare for acts of sabotage. That's quite an interesting warning, an interesting statement from the Russian president, isn't it? Yeah, we'll see. We will see, because the collective West is definitely running out of things to sanction. I didn't even think they'd get this far, to the point of sanctioning screwdrivers and knitting needles. But there you have it. So that is Putin talking about the sanctions, and let's do our final clown world, and it has to do with the statue, the new statue that was unveiled in Vienna, Austria. And this statue, this statue at this fountain, commemorates 150 years of Austria's water supply. And I'm going to put a picture of this statue, these sculptures, this art, if you want to call it that, and let me know in the comments down below what you think. I know what I think, but let me know what you think about these statues at this fountain. A new fountain has been unveiled in Vienna, celebrating 150 years of the city's spring water supply. This is what they came up with at a cost of 1.8 million euros of taxpayers' money. So you've seen the images of the latest statue in Vienna. The statues at this water fountain in Vienna. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Oh boy. So here's a beautiful building. This is beauty right here. This is beauty. The statue in Vienna, that fountain statue, not so much. And let's see the statue of our monks, Kirill and Methodius. So like they couldn't come up with a statue like this in Vienna, something along these lines. They had to come up with that monstrosity in Vienna. Come on, guys. So here you can see the statue of Kirill and Methodius. All right, that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code TheDuran20 and get 20% off all merchandise, like this Zelensky green jacket. That's the video. Take care.